uh, part two.
Okay, so we're back with Tom Gauker and with our esteemed guest, Darren DeVivo, and we were talking about Julian Lennon.
Right.
Yeah, Darren had,
Julian, yeah, I think we left off where I was saying that the Velat came in, the advanced single blew us away.
yeah.
We played that album in so much in the mid
Hmm.
80s. Two that came after that weren't quite as strong, but there was still
Much too late,
great stuff on
much
it.
too late for goodbyes was the follow-up.
The
But
next single, right? But then the
yeah,
next album, The Secret Value of Daydreaming, and his third album, Mr. Jordan, we
yeah,
played him. We did, and so it was, and then Julian was quiet for many years. And when he put out
yes.
Photograph Smile,
Great album.
he came, that was the first time I interviewed him. He came up to FUV, and there was the problem with that I found out was that he had a new manager or handlers. I think the guy who was working with Julian when Photograph Smile came out, maybe he ran the indie label it was on, was very controlling. And I remember Julian being all business and not too pleasant.
Oh,
Um,
hmm.
Easy to interview, but nothing. There was there was no warmth there. And
Oh, wow.
for the performance, I've never had this happen before, or since. They brought up a DAT, a digital audio tape of
Yeah,
the backing tracks that Julian sang to, and it was like, what? Why bother? Because this sounds like the album. Because it was the album without the vocal, and Julian
that's
was singing
awesome.
it,
Yeah.
singing to the recorded backing, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, this is really weird, and it left a bad taste in my mouth.
Hmm.
Fast forward, I don't know how many years later, Julian had put out a single with another artist, a collaborative single called Lucy, and it was about his friend from grammar school
Yes, yes.
drew the picture that was Lucy in the
Yeah,
sky with diamonds. Julian had reconnected with her and found out unfortunately, she passed. She had cancer.
yeah.
He recorded the song with another musician whose name I forgot now. The single came out as Julian Lennon and I interviewed the two of them at Electric Lady Studios, Jimi Hendrix's old place in Manhattan, which is a trip in itself being in there. And Julian was much warmer,
Huh.
much friendlier, joking around,
Hmm.
and I think he made reference to being free of the uh the people that he had been with, and he had had a bad experience when he was with Atlantic, who I think were pushing him, and his second and third albums came out very quickly when he wasn't quite ready, and then this indie album, which he should have been able to produce anything he wanted to. He had this whoever that guy was. And when we weren't recording, I asked him, I says, was it the guy with the perfect hair and he says, yeah. I says, Julian, that interview was very awkward. I told him, this didn't, we weren't recording this. It was just a conversation at the end. I said, and he was singing over a pre-recorded backing track. And he was laughing about that. And that sounded like the Photograph Smile period was not a good experience. It was a very pleasant visit with him and the other musician when that single came out. And another case where I hope I have an opportunity to chat with him again when he's just about to release a new EP. If you go to Julian's website, song called Because, and it's got a few other tracks on it, which is a limited edition vinyl EP. So who knows if planets align again for me, maybe I'll have a third shot
Hmm.
to talk to Julian and to talk to Danny. So
Yeah. Well, Julian, of course, they're all very interesting because of, well, where they come from. And it cannot be denied that when Julian was growing up, even though John was in and out, touring and recording, his influence on the little boy was there.
Yeah.
And John, as I know, and as most people know, maybe, was a very, very complex individual. Even when I met him, he was hot and cold. When I
Really.
met him, he didn't want me in the room, excuse me, the room that he was in at the party. And then later in the party, he's like, oh, hey, Brooke. It must be John sneezing here. Hey, Brooke, how are you? Thanks for coming to my birthday party. Yeah, so we didn't know which way he was going to behave. Now, if that was happening whenever John's duplicate or multiple personalities or behavior is affecting a child who's like a sponge and absorbing John, it has to have, in terms of behavior, not so much music. Okay, let's not talk about, but the way the behavior develops in a child is being influenced by John Lennon. This kid is going to be something else,
Hmm.
unlike other kids. You
Yeah.
know, it's the same kind of thing that we can say about James, and the same thing that we can say about Danny. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
this look at the influence when these kids were growing up. That they were being influenced by these giants, but not only that, but their personalities. So then they come up, and it's like, okay, now who am I?
Hmm.
I'm my own person here. And I would imagine that they have to deal with that on some level as they're growing from a young kid to a teenager and then to a young adult. I would imagine that that's a lot of stuff that they have to process, and I would imagine that Julian
Sure.
had to do that, and I'm sure that James did as well. I don't know about the girls with Paul.
Yeah.
They're all very successful, but of course they're not in the music business, so that's a whole other situation. And I
They
don't know. I don't know about Zach. Have you ever interviewed Zach?
No, no, no. And I know very little about Ringo's kids. It's interesting because while some of them are somewhat in the spotlight, they're not totally in the spotlight, and they're able to get out of it when they need to. Stella's got her fashion line, and Mary McCartney puts herself out there on social media.
She's very,
Um,
yeah, she's very aggressive, Mary.
she's terrific. The cooking stuff, and I can't boil water yet. I'm watching Mary McCartney's, making veggie salads and stuff.
Sure.
I got a little bit of a crush on Mary, but we don't have to.
A little.
Um, um, and even Danny. I mean, they're or Julian even. They know their place. They're able to keep their privacy, and you know. I really think their parents did. It appears that they did a good job raising them because they, maybe not everyone totally screwed, but they seem to all generally have their heads in the right place. And what we were saying about Julian was dead on. And I think that speaks volumes for what kind of mom Cynthia must have been, because
Oh,
she
there you
probably
go.
kept Julian very grounded.
There you
And,
go.
you
Yeah.
know,
So that's the point, though,
yeah,
and I thank you for addressing that with me as well, because then there's Sean, which is an entirely different situation. I mean, Sean is there's no comparison that he would be anything like his older brother. You wouldn't
right.
even know they were brothers. I mean, obviously we know he's Yoko's child, but still, Sean. Um, I think somehow, of course we know the tragedy had happened when he was I think he was 4 or 5
Five.
when John
Yeah.
was 5. Yeah, he just turned 5
Yeah.
when John turned 40. Yeah, and so that's a whole other situation. And of course, you can be sure that knowing Yoko, I met Yoko 3 different times when I lived in New York, and I know about her. And there's a lot of course, people have their own interpretation of her, but you can be sure that the way Sean is largely because of Yoko. Now, I know that John adored him, and he got a lot of that adoration even before John left us. So it's an interesting comparison when you look at the Beatle children. Tom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm talking so much here. Tom, could you please join us? Forgive me for talking so much.
It's okay. That's what we're here for. I'm a big fan of your show. The whole reason we are doing interviews is that I believe that the host of these, the Beatle podcast are basically, leaders of the Beatle world. They're kind of shaping the image, the thoughts of what's
Right.
going on. And you have Talk More Talk. We already had Kid O'Toole on, and things we said today to me feels like I root for you every time you're in there because you'll do a hot take where the other guys won't, and it always is uh, Ken Michaels who'll go very nice or very good, and then they'll change the subject. But you're
Yeah.
willing to get out there and just give it like a zinger once or twice.
Well, yeah, it's Ken's a good friend. I've known Ken for over 40 years.
Oh,
I met him when he was working at a radio station in Westchester County, north of the city, and I don't think if he had started a Beatles show on the radio at that station, it was really at the very beginning. I know not long after that he went to WDHA in northern New Jersey, which is I think where it really started to happen for Ken. Ken had asked me, I think it was in 2013, if I wanted to get involved in something, and I didn't really quite understand what he had in mind. Podcast was a word I'd never heard before, and I'm not even sure if that's what he had in mind, although things we said today, I believe existed at that time. This was before Alan Kozin came in, and I believe it was just Ken, Al Sussman, and Steve Marinucci.
Steve Barry.
Um,
Yeah.
and I didn't quite. I was in a bad place professionally, and I said, Ken, I don't understand what you want to do. You want to do like a Beatles show with like what Eddie Trunk has got going with heavy metal, but you want to put me and you on no offense on the camera? Um, and then a few years went by and it started to make sense. I've been asked to come on things we said today as a guest a few times. And then it was around the time that Egypt Station came out, McCartney's album in 2018, that they said, Al Sussman's leaving. We need a host. You interested? And the rest is history. I didn't exactly know what I was getting into, but I live for doing the shows. It's very casual. It's not a very polished show. I think that's what people appreciate about. And we'll talk about anything with the Beatles. Talk More Talk was a more recent. Um, they asked me late last year when a couple of the other hosts left, um, if I knew anyone, and I was like,
Yeah, I'll do
like
it.
you want to do another? I'm like, yeah. I mean, more times than not, these are shows that could be done with minimal to no preparation because we know,
Mm.
So this is fun.
Mhm.
And so no, Talk More Talk since the beginning of the year. I'm doing that with Kid O'Toole and Ken Michaels, and um, another. I think I'm very proud of what we do, and I hope that I think people are liking it. Um, I mean, we've done some pretty amazing interviews on things we said today. We've had Peter Jackson on twice.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, Peter Jackson, that was funny because that was a week before the Get Back documentary was to debut, premiere on Disney
Nice,
Plus right around
nice.
Thanksgiving. The
Yeah.
weekend before Thanksgiving, Ken sends me and actually called us. We were on a phone call instead of just email. He says, Peter Jackson just reached out. I said, yeah. I says, wasn't he the shortstop for the Phillies? He goes, no, Peter Jackson, the filmmaker. I didn't know who it was because I was not a fan of
Lord of the Rings.
I didn't know my family knew the movies. I can't even think of their names, The Lord of the Rings and So he's explaining, and I'm like, holy smokes. I says, you really think that Peter Jackson, he had contacted us because he was like basically saying, I did get back. I love the Beatles. I listened to you guys here in New Zealand. I want to come on the show and talk about the Beatles with you.
Yeah.
No restrictions.
You know what I found that his speech pattern was hard. Like, the way that he talks, you have to listen to it a while to get the hang of what he like.
Yeah,
How,
yeah. And the way, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
And it
I
was, I was the skeptic going, if you could figure out a way to prove that is the real Peter Jackson and not some yo-yo on the other end messing with us,
yeah,
it was Peter Jackson. And he came on and he had his iPad and he's showing us stuff that didn't make the final cut, giving us examples of
Mm.
camera angles of the rooftop concert that we aren't going to see. He had
Nice.
told us about, he left a lot of extra material in there, which Disney was not thrilled with because it turned out to be, what was it, 10 hours when it should have been less than that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he wanted our viewers to push Disney to put it out on
I remember.
disc. And then he came back on the second time to talk. It was after it was when Now and Then came out. Yeah, it was when Now and Then came out. We're hoping to get him back on the third time, um, for any reason.
Yeah.
He happened
Yeah,
to
he's
be,
interesting.
yeah, he was great, and the first show was 4 hours long,
Yep. Mhm.
and I don't know how many times people will actually watch these or listen to these shows when they're that long, but by the end of the 4 hours, I was like, I don't have any other questions. I can't believe
But,
this, but
but he
we,
was his energy level and his passion and his knowledge were all in sync. So it was like he was hot to talk. Like
he
he's like,
was
oh, yeah,
he
Yeah.
was a kid in a candy shop talking about
yeah,
the Beatles
yeah.
and the people who were going to listen to him, and it wasn't work related. And he, would ask us some questions about things that he didn't know. And somehow he was able. I think another thing was he was appearing as a fan and had no obligations to Disney. If he didn't want to mention the documentary, I don't think he had to. He was there as a fan and didn't hold back in giving us kind of behind the scenes info on, and it was remarkable that it happened.
Let me ask you, Darren, did you like what he did with Get Back?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
It's a lot. Obviously, it's very long. So and as I've gotten older, I've found that anything beyond an hour, I'm probably falling asleep. Um, so, but you can watch it in chapters and sections, and I think it's remarkable that he did it. It's remarkable what he did and that he was able to basically make us all turn us all into flies on the wall and not just get a 2 hour taste of what happened that month, but practically we moved in to the studio to see what was going on a daily basis and
Hmm.
get to see what the Beatles were actually like as young guys hanging out with each other
Hmm.
because we were there for so much time.
Hmm.
I mean, hearing Ringo Starr use the word fart was just like, I'm hysterical. I says, Ringo Starr farts. He's human. We get this look at them that we otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And I think it's remarkable what he's done and what he's done since then with,
Okay.
his abilities, technical abilities in the MAL system he's created and what he did with Now and Then. And he
Hmm.
is involved with the new anthology, the new Free Bird mix.
Yeah.
To what extent, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
and the Revolver box set. So
Yeah. Let me
The
ask you this. I see that you interviewed Lawrence Juber as well.
I've interviewed Lawrence probably about a dozen times, I would think.
Yeah, I interviewed Lawrence about 3 times. I actually performed with Lawrence out here in California.
Right.
What's your takeaway
Well,
with Anything pops to
Well,
mind?
first of all, he's a brilliant guitarist, and
Yes, he is.
because he tends to keep what he does to like acoustic, instrumental acoustic,
Yes.
maybe not towards maybe the contemporary jazz um, direction, which he could very easily cross into. A lot of people still don't know who he is, but the
Yeah.
guy is one of the most remarkable guitarists I've ever heard, and
Yes.
very friendly. He was the musician I interviewed in person at FUV in WFUV in
Oh,
1991 when he put out Solo Flight, which was his first commercially available solo album.
soon
And it seemed as though every couple of years I'd have him back.
so
And then
soon
he came up a few times with Al Stewart when he was working with Al Stewart in the
after,
90s.
yeah. So you got him soon after Wings broke up the first time
No, by that time it was
10 years.
because Wings broke up
more
around.
than 10. Yeah, yeah. But he had kind of disappeared. I mean, he had appeared at I remember in the see Wings broke up and they ended in 81. By the late 80s, Lawrence had been a guest at the Fest for Beatles fans, which was used to be called Beatle Fest
Yeah.
fan convention. And he was a guest one year and he had released a privately issued um, EP called Standard Time,
Huh.
which had a few songs on it and one or two Wings outtakes were included in it.
Oh,
And that was like the first thing I remember hearing about Lawrence since he just sort of drifted out of the picture with Wings
yeah.
at the beginning of the decade.
Right.
So he was sort of out of sight for about a decade or so. And then he, put that first acoustic album out. And well, he's, you know, been embraced by the Beatle community and has, if you count compilations, he's released over 30 albums.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, um, maybe even he's maybe nearing 40 now. Um, and he's amazing, and it's an honor to call him a friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone else I wanted to mention that you interviewed, only because I had a business relationship. We had a business together, and that's Richie Havens.
Hmm.
Richie was like no one else in the world. And we
Yeah.
worked together. We actually created Video Coffee House on McDougal Street at the Speakeasy,
Wow.
85, 86. And we had Pete Seeger, Odetta, Dave Van Ronk, Sean Colvin,
Wow. Yeah.
uh, Tech Two Step, and of course Richie performed
Oh,
as well,
that's
and a lot of other people. What was your impressions and takeaway with Richie Havens since he was
Rich,
such a
Richie was like being with
yeah, spirit?
a divine figure. And I that was one that was again. I mean, starting in 1991 is when I would start doing artist interviews, WFUV, me and a couple of the other DJs, and I probably interviewed Richie about three times, and I know I emceed at least one club show of his, and we knew each other
Hmm.
very casually when paths would cross every maybe once a year or two. And he was with Rhino Records. He had put out an anthology. An anthology had come out, and he was in an album of original, a new album for Rhino. Um,
Ground,
I'm sorry.
Common Ground. Is that the name of it? Common
I think
Ground.
Common Ground had come out already,
Oh, they come
but
out.
he was very cool, very personable, very
Yes.
warm, very gentle. And I
Hmm.
was devastated when he died because
Yeah.
um, I didn't know. Well, I mean, I don't think many people knew he was ill. I hadn't in years. He was one of the many. I hope that maybe I'll get one more opportunity um, to interview more, at least meet him, or and then the regrets of. I wonder if I had been a little more because even though I work in radio and broadcasting, and I tend to be the type of person that tends to prefer to slip into the shadow in the background, and I, don't necessarily like social situations that much. I do
Hmm.
find them occasionally uncomfortable, and I often feel like if I had been a little more open or warmer, or maybe picked up the phone on a rare occasion, or went to a couple of extra shows, I might have
Wow.
had more of a relationship with these artists because there was a personal connection when we would sit down for an interview or something. And Richie was one that I thought, you know, I would love to have at least hung out with him one more time. Or, I died in 2013, I think.
Yes.
And it was just like, oh, damn it, you know.
I met him at the Live at the World Cafe, and his wife was, I guess, his manager at the time.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Do you guys need merch? You need this? You need that?" She
Oh,
was
yeah.
very, yeah, she was very cool. Like I always like
Yeah.
talking to
It's
her,
like,
and I was like,
yeah, that was at a time, that was like at the end of when the music industry in general would make merch and free stuff available. And bringing home on a daily basis all this stuff that now has turned my house into a warehouse. But I miss those days when you need CDs for giveaways, you need T-shirts,
yeah,
you need okay, yeah, great. But she was very cool, Richie's wife.
yeah.
Uh, Sort of
She had,
on
she's
my mind. I
crushable.
can't remember him though.
She was very attractive. Hey, we're at the 5 minute. I have one question. Can I do it, bro? You have one item you can buy at the end of this year. The new Paul album, the anthology album, Power to the People album, or a concert for Bangladesh. You can only buy one. Which one would
Well,
you buy?
if Paul puts something out by the end of the year, we don't know if it's going to be this year or
Oh,
next.
the the
So
the, the thing would be yes, he would, because
the reality is Darren has to have them all.
okay.
Where I'm going to find the money that's necessary, I'm not sure. The printing press, my printing press is broke. Well, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that. I would say of those releases, they're both, well, in the case of the two big box sets that have just been announced, they're both very flawed. Uh, they're both, if I had to pick one, I guess I'd go with the Lennon set because there's more unheard stuff there than anthology. But believe me, they're both going to be, if not under my Christmas tree, then um, they'll both be in my house, much to my wife's dismay, because it'll be more stuff coming in. The Mind Games box set and the All Things Must Pass crate.
Yeah.
When those arrived at the front door from in the mailman, I had some explaining to do. Where are you putting this? The kid's bedroom? I know. I'm going to be in the garage living with it. Okay. So, but
Well,
I'm looking forward to both releases. I just wish they wouldn't like put them all out at the same time and charge what they charge for them.
Yeah, I agree.
But I guess the Lennon one I'm slightly more interested in than a redo of Anthology, which is going to come down to I think 13 unheard tracks
Yeah,
when all
yeah.
is said and done.
Anthology 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's great having you with us, Darren. And actually, I'd like to speak with you privately. So maybe
Yeah.
I'll send an email and we can continue with our
Sure.
conversation. If
Sure.
yeah. Okay.
But thank you for asking me to be on. It's a pleasure, thrill.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you with us for sure. And Tom, is there anything else you'd like to say before we say cheers?
Yeah, your writing skills are really good. We were communicating via, email, just chit-chatting.
Uh,
And I was like, when are you going to write a book? There has to
well,
be a topic.
I have been threatening to write one, and I could tell you that I've got I really think another favorite band of mine has been totally overlooked, and that would be Chicago to
Hmm.
have a complete career spanning a assessment of their work. And I am
Huh.
actually in conversation with another author who is trying to light the necessary explosives under my behind to get me started.
That's a lot of work.
Um, and once I get rolling, I, have kind of in my mind what I'd like to see. The brilliant work, the questionable stuff, the hits, the ballads, all in one place. Kind of a reference history of thing for Chicago, because there's been a few books and they've mostly been pretty lousy.
That'll
So,
be a big for the CTA, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, again, thanks very much to Darren DeVivo, Tom Gauker for joining me as well. I
always.
wish everyone the best, and we will be back again with who? It's a mystery, but that's what keeps it all exciting. Thanks again.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Okay. Okay, so Darren,
Yes, sir.